Arthur Finch, a man whose life revolved around the meticulous order of archival documents, found himself adrift in the chaotic inheritance of his eccentric grandfather, Elias Thorne. The old Victorian house, perched on a hill overlooking a perpetually grey sea, was a labyrinth of forgotten curiosities. But it was the grandfather clock in the study that truly commanded attention. A towering sentinel of dark wood and brass, it stood silent, its pendulum still, its face a mosaic of Roman numerals and arcane symbols. Arthur, a man of logic, saw only a broken antique. His first week was a blur of sorting dusty books and cataloguing bizarre artifacts. The clock remained inert. Then, on a Tuesday morning, it chimed. Not once, but 5 times, though the hands pointed to 2:30. Arthur dismissed it as a relic's last gasp. But the chiming continued, erratic and unsettling. Sometimes it would chime 13 times at midnight, sometimes it would race through an hour in minutes, only to slow to a crawl, its minute hand trembling. Arthur, a stickler for punctuality, found himself constantly checking his wrist, a growing unease settling in his gut. He discovered Elias's journal, tucked beneath a loose floorboard. Its pages were filled with frantic, looping script, detailing observations of the Chronos rift and the true chime. Elias wrote of the clock as a gateway, not a timepiece, and warned against answering its call. Arthur scoffed. Grandfather Elias had always been prone to fanciful delusions. Yet, the clock's anomalies began to bleed into Arthur's reality. A cup of tea he'd just brewed would be stone-cold moments later. A book he'd been reading, placed carefully on his bedside table, would reappear on the study shelf. He'd catch glimpses of movement in his peripheral vision, shadows that weren't there when he turned. One evening, staring into the clock's polished brass pendulum, he saw a fleeting reflection, not his own, but a gaunt, terrified face, eyes wide with unspeakable horror. He blinked, and it was gone, replaced by his own bewildered visage. Fatigue, he told himself. Stress. Determined to find a rational explanation, Arthur decided to examine the clock's inner workings. He carefully opened the ornate wooden door, revealing a complex array of gears and springs. But beneath the polished brass, etched into the very wood of the clock's frame, were the same arcane symbols from Elias's journal. They pulsed faintly, a barely perceptible luminescence. He tried to record the clock's behavior with a digital camera, but the footage was always corrupted, or showed only a static, silent object. The distortions, the strange reflections, the whispers he sometimes thought he heard, they were all happening only to him. The isolation of the house, combined with the clock's relentless, inexplicable behavior, began to fray Arthur's nerves. He stopped sleeping, convinced the clock was watching him, waiting. He considered smashing it, but a strange, almost hypnotic pull prevented him. It was as if the clock had become the true master of the house, and he, merely its latest caretaker. One stormy afternoon, Arthur decided he couldn't live with it anymore. He would sell the clock, rid himself of its oppressive presence. As he stood before it, a crowbar in his hand, the clock began to chime. Not the usual erratic sequence, but a slow, deliberate, resonant toll. 1, 2, 3. Arthur counted, his breath catching in his throat. It chimed 13 times. The final, echoing note vibrated through the very foundations of the house. The study twisted. The walls rippled like water. The air grew thick and cold. Arthur stumbled back, dropping the crowbar with a clang that seemed to stretch into eternity. He looked at the clock's glass face, and this time, the reflection was clear. It was Elias Thorne, his grandfather, but younger, his face contorted in a silent scream, his hands pressed against the inside of the glass. He was mouthing words, desperate, frantic. Arthur could almost hear him. "Don't answer the chime." Then, Elias's face faded, replaced by Arthur's own. But it wasn't his current reflection. It was the gaunt, terrified face he had glimpsed before, eyes wide with unspeakable horror. He saw his own hands, pressed against the inside of the glass, just like Elias's. The clock chimed once more, a soft, final tick. The Chronos Rift had claimed another keeper. Arthur Finch was now part of the clock, a silent observer, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to inherit the house, to hear the chime, and to answer its call. Friday Night Frights, a deeper dive into the darkness. New stories every Friday.